from the new recording lair located deep beneath the Wine and Spirit store in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
You're listening to the Masonic Lite podcast.
Studio 665 presents Masonic Lite podcast. This show is recorded by Masons, for Masons, and is for entertainment purposes only. And please, no wagering.
This podcast is not endorsed by any Grand Lodge, and the ridiculous ramblings of the hosts are their own. And now, here's your host.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's Pete here at Masonic Lite Podcast.
Hi,
we're episode what? God, I should have looked that up.
11? We should have before we started.
Yeah, 111. So
100. Wait, that's a lot of ones.
That's 3 ones. That'll win you a poker game right there. 3 aces.
Man.
So on tonight's show, we're going to be interviewing a Masonic brother of ours named Brian Smith. Say hi, Brian.
How you doing?
So, Brian, tonight's interview is not really so much going to be about Freemasonry, but it's more going to be about, somebody's real job. And his real job is working at the hospital, and he'll give us a little bit more about his background later. But let's go around. What have you guys been up to in the past couple of weeks? Jack?
Well, I took a hiatus and went up to Massachusetts to visit my children's and the new grandbaby. So those of you that see me on Facebook, you've seen pictures of the grandbaby, and he is awesome. Pretty much that's it, Masonically speaking.
Tim, have you been up to anything?
Not really. I mean, everything's been shut down in Pennsylvania since the 1st of December. And although we did get word this week that we were going to be allowed to open again starting February 1st. So just processing a lot of dues checks and beginning to work on our lodge audit. That's about it.
Josh, but you're the only other really active guy right now. What's going on with you?
We had our monthly Zoom meeting for Lamberton Lodge. Other than that, just the normal behind-the-scenes stuff.
Larry, anything for you? Or who was going to talk?
Larry?
Me.
Clear.
I read Scottish Rite magazine. Does that count?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Scottish Rite magazine. And the Pennsylvania Freemason came in. That wasn't such a good magazine this time.
Because we weren't in
Harsh
it.
critic.
Yeah, harsh. And that's a wonderful magazine 99% of the time. But I think because of COVID, nobody's working there.
Well, and there's
And Brian, have you looked at anything? Brian, have you looked at your dues card? What have you?
Have I looked at it?
Yeah, have you done anything in the Masonic world in the past couple of weeks?
No, I haven't. Just working and drinking. That's pretty much it.
That's 2 good things.
Excellent.
2 Masonic things.
Yeah.
I'd like to, just for a minute, Josh, help me understand what your Zoom meetings look like. Are they business meetings? Are we allowed to do business in a Zoom meeting?
We don't really do lodge business. We just kind of get together, talk a little bit, and I'll usually prepare like some sort of little presentation or talk about something.
Nice, well done.
But yeah, other than that, it's pretty light. It's not it's not a tiled meeting or anything. Obviously.
How many do you get?
Usually 12 to 15 guys, something like that.
Okay.
Wow, that's impressive.
Same, mostly the same guys, right?
Right. Yeah. It's the usual crowd.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's been a couple people that I haven't seen for a while actually that have shown up. So
that's
cool
great.
Too.
That's why you do it.
It appears.
Hey, Tim, before we go to our first break, will you tell our listeners about our patrons?
Absolutely. We are we're on the air and supported by our patrons on Patreon. I think that got that in the correct order. But for as little as $1 a month,
$1,
you can keep these shenanigans going. We want to especially thank our $13 a month supporters, but we also appreciate both our $5 and $1 supporters. You can find that information at patreon.com/Masonic Lite Podcast.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk to our guest, Brian D. Smith.
Why choose George J. Grove & Sons for your next home improvement project? At George J. Grove & Sons, we've built our reputation on quality and trust for more than 50 years. From planning to materials to installation, George J. Grove promises a home improvement experience second to none. Whether your goal is reducing energy costs, decreasing maintenance, updating curb appeal, or simply increasing the value of your home, the George J. Grove team will recommend and provide solutions that stand the test of time. Call 717-393-0859 for an estimate or visit us at georgejgrove.com.
Hey, everybody, we're back, and we're going to be speaking with our guest tonight, Brother Brian Smith of Lamberton Lodge in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Brian.
How you guys doing?
Great.
Amazing.
So Brian, I kind of thought of you. I've been trying for a while to get a little bit away from just talking Freemasonry to talking about, we do have real jobs. And I kind of thought about your job and what you and your coworkers are going through. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you work?
Okay. Well, like Pete said, my name is Brian Smith. I'm currently working as a nurse at Lancaster General Recovery Room. I've been up there for approximately 6 years. I spent 15 years working as an emergency room nurse, and thankfully left the ER before COVID started. But I've been up there now, like I said, for about 6 years. I've been working as a nurse for, going on 24 years this year. So I've been doing this job. This is pretty much all I know.
So go back to your training. So how did that everything start out? With college or with the military? Where did it start?
So I graduated in 1996 from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Took some time off and started my nursing career April of 1997. I've pretty much done quite a few different jobs as a nurse. Started off my career as a camp nurse. Did that for the summer, and then I went into medical surgical nursing, cardiac nursing, and then started in the emergency room in 2000. I did that till about 2015, and at that point in time, I reached a point where I needed to have a change and went up to the recovery room, and I've been doing that ever since. Spent 7 years in the United States Army Reserve as a Army Nurse Corps officer, and resigned in September of 2007.
Awesome. And were you stationed anywhere crazy during that time?
No. I was fortunate enough that being as a reservist, I never got my number pulled, so I never got deployed overseas, but I did a lot of training. I was in Washington, I was in Missouri, I was in Louisiana, I was in Georgia. I was all over the continental United States, but fortunately enough, never got deployed overseas. So stayed safe that way.
So as a surgical recovery, right? That's what we're talking about, post-surgery recovery?
Yep.
So I would like to publicly apologize for anything that I might have said or done while coming out of sedation after surgery.
That's okay. We don't hold it against anybody.
I've seen some wacky stuff. I'm just here to say.
Me too.
And anything jumped to mind for you? Any crazy stories that you can
say you gotta have
without
stories.
fired?
No. We have the occasional, it's amazing how much and how strong 100-pound, 95-year-old grandmother can be. You wouldn't think it, but let me tell you, I've seen her take on 3 or 4 grown men and pretty much never all the things that come out of her mouth. I don't think she would say at church on Sunday.
It's everything she's been holding back for 95 years.
Brilliant.
That's right. All the stuff
for her.
I love it.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good. I look at it this way. I always tell myself at this point now that I'm in a recovery room, any confusion or, disorientation, we actually cause that because we have medications to do that. Whereas opposed to my other job, before I came up there working in the emergency room, that may have been done on their own accord. So
recreationally, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I have to be a little bit more sympathetic if we do it as opposed to if they did it.
So, there's very few jobs where we can say it's probably harder now than it used to be. But, I can tell you that I think yours might be one of them because, I talked to you during all the heroin overdoses. Tell us how busy the hospital was at a given time with that epidemic.
Well, I mean, when heroin really made its big push through the county, I mean, it was nothing for us to see 5, 6, 7 people a day. We see them anywhere from, just mild overdoses to, I've probably pulled half a dozen people out of a car who were blue or purple in the face and, starting IVs on them, giving them medications to reverse the counter effects. You'd be surprised, though, how many people do not like us once we take that high away from them after they spent all that good money. But, you try to make them understand that, if it wasn't for us, you'd be dead. But, it is what it is. And, they just go about their business and do their thing. But it definitely was a huge problem for a long time. I think it's starting to kind of taper off a little. I don't obviously see it as much anymore, not being right in the front lines, but friends of mine still work there, and I don't think heroin is as big of a problem. And quite frankly, I hate to say it, but I think COVID kind of curtailed some of that stuff. People aren't going out and they don't have access to the amount of recreational things that they did, last summer. So
Brian, here's an oddball off the wall question, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but how did your opinion of the people who were coming in as ODs change over the course of your career in the emergency room? Did you become more sympathetic, less sympathetic? Did you like freeze it all out?
Well, I mean, I would say at the beginning when the first couple times I saw it, I was probably a lot more sympathetic than near the end of my career in the emergency room. And I guess that probably stems from, seeing the same face multiple times and people utilizing, ambulance services, taking the ambulance away from somebody who could potentially be, dying from a heart attack. And only because, and this is a very sensitive subject, but, for me, people make a choice to utilize that drug. And when you choose to use that, there are ramifications from it. And some of those ramifications obviously can be very deadly. And, things have changed from what it used to be 10, 15 years ago. The amount of stuff that has been put into heroin to try to make you more high, try to get you that buzz quicker, to stay in that buzz longer. those have definitely, really pushed the envelope as far as that fine line between getting high and overdosing.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you see that same face over and over again, and you come in and we bring you back, and then you curse me out and have nothing but foul things to say about me, and we let you go, and 2 or 3 weeks later, I see you back again. It's the same thing. It really kind of wanes on your sympathy nerve.
Yeah, I did hope that didn't make you uncomfortable, but
not at
I was
all.
just curious how how you change in that, because I could see some people going the other way and just becoming more and more angry at the system and wanting to make people's lives better. I could see it go either way.
Yes, and from a medical standpoint, when I see people that are struggling to, make ends meet to get, medications that will potentially, keep them alive, like insulin and epinephrine, for, allergic reactions and cardiac meds and those things that are legitimate, in my opinion, legitimate medical problems that need legitimate medications. And all of those people can't even afford, but yet, there was a huge push for the last year, 2 years to make Narcan free to everybody, free to the public. Yeah. So little Jimmy can unfortunately go to class, and, little Johnny's mom didn't realize little Jimmy was allergic to peanuts, make some cookies for the class. Next thing you know, he's suffering an anaphylactic reaction, and he can't have epinephrine because the classroom can't afford it.
Yeah.
So that really kind of struck a nerve for me in the medical.
I think Narcan is the definition of unintended consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point now where, they're having, and this is legitimately true, the new thing is they're having Narcan parties where one person...
God, don't even finish the story.
Well, I mean,
oh, God.
You open this Pandora's box, so... Yeah, so one person stays sober with the Narcan, and everybody pushes as far as they can go, and then they're there to bring them back, and all's well. So you can see why my sympathy factor is a little light in that aspect.
I hear you.
Now, your significant other, she still works in the ER, correct?
She sure does.
And I also heard a rumor, without getting into HIPAA, we can beep it out, but didn't you guys both test positive for COVID too at one point?
We sure did. Yeah, we both we were down and out for about 10 days or so. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but yeah, we both tested positive. I've had one vaccine so far. She's had both of hers of the series, so I'm going in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I think, to get my second dose. So,
what is your understanding? This is it's along that subject. So once you get the vaccine, it doesn't mean you can't get COVID, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, it's now it's not like a flu vaccine where they introduce a little bit of flu to allow the antibodies to build up. This is it's basically it retrains the cells to identify the COVID virus, to realize that, hey, this is not supposed to be in your body, and you start building up antibodies. So if it recognizes that COVID virus, it will then be able to fight it off. Now, just like anything else, that doesn't mean you still can't get COVID. But just like the flu, everybody always says, oh, well, I got a flu shot, I got the flu. Well, you may have still gotten the flu, but you weren't like hospitalized. You weren't down and out for a month. Mm-hmm. You just got a very minor form of it, which is the hope.
I don't think most people have any idea how bad the flu is.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if you really honestly and truly got the flu, believe me, you would get a flu vaccine every year. You'd get multiple if you could to prevent that from ever happening again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to dig in a little more into COVID and just some more all things Brian.
At the historic Smithton Inn of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, we're pleased to serve the latest creations from Weathered Vineyard Winery, along with spirits from Thistlefinch Distillery in Lancaster, all to be experienced in the tasting room of a beautifully restored 18th century bed and breakfast. Cigars by D&S Cigar are available for your enjoyment in the courtyard. The historic Smithton Inn is convenient to Lancaster County's most interesting attractions. Just minutes from the Ephrata Cloister and the Green Dragon Farmers Market. And a short drive can get you to charming Lidditz, thriving downtown Lancaster, as well as Hershey, Bird in Hand, and Intercourse, or Valley Forge and Gettysburg. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or an active vacation full of sightseeing and attractions, the historic Smithton Inn will be a welcoming oasis from everyday life, one that you'll want to visit again and again. Stop in and visit at 900 West Main Street in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, or check out our website at historicsmithtoninn.com, or simply call us at 717-733-6094. Just ask for Pastmaster Dave.
As far back as the mid-1800s, records exist describing the pre-meeting tradition of brethren smoking cigars during and after gatherings. To this day, the practice of smoking cigars remains very much alive in many lodges. This custom is considered a time for brethren to relax, exchange ideas, and enjoy the simplicity and fellowship that is the very essence of our brotherhood. This is what Hiram and Solomon Cigars is all about. Our starting principles are to bring Masonic brethren together in the harmony of a good cigar. Pull up a chair, sit back, light up any of our premium cigars, and enjoy the history. Hiram and Solomon Cigars can be found at fine cigar retailers. For a complete list, visit hiramandSolomonCigars.com or check them out on social media to find out when they'll be at a live event near you. Hiram and Solomon Cigars is pleased to be the official cigar of the Masonic Lite podcast.
And we're back with our guest, Brother Brian Smith, who is a recovery room nurse and a former ER nurse. And we're kind of talking right now a little bit about the COVID crisis. And Brian, from the beginning of this till now, what kind of things have really changed at the hospital as far as, procedures and, quantity of patients and all that, and amount of hours everybody's working?
Sure. So, when everything started, nobody knew what to expect. So, the hospital maybe had 40 patients in the hospital. Unfortunately, at that time, there wasn't a lot of treatment plans. They were still, trying to work things out. I mean, the biggest thing about COVID you have to remember is that most diseases that we get vaccinated for, there's a lot of scientific stuff that's going on in the background that nobody sees. Somebody will do a test and another scientist will, basically come up with data that's against that test and so on and so on. And then, they finally come up with potentially a vaccine, a treatment plan, and then it's exposed to the public. So the problem is that, and from a scientific community, we understand that process. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand that. So everything about COVID is happening in real time. So if you remember way back at the beginning, everything was, you couldn't touch anything. You had to spray everything down, and COVID could live on surfaces for 24 to 48 hours. And then about a month later, they said, well, it doesn't really live that long. So,
Oh, boy.
Okay. So, basically, we're learning as we go. So when COVID first came out, we had 40, 50 cases in the hospital. The entire place shut down. Like, all surgeries were canceled, anything elective. We cut off all of visitors. Everything just shut down. And then that went on for a few months, and we started kind of learning new things, and things started opening back up. As far as the hospital is concerned, we started doing some more procedures. We occasionally would allow a visitor for certain things. And we've kind of adapted as we've learned. And there are certain things that we can do as far as our surgical cases or other elective things that we need done. We can still do those safely. The problem is that we're testing more and more and more. So just like anything else, you test more people are going to come back positive. But I would say the average daily census for COVID in the hospital now is probably about 90 people. So we've definitely seen an increase in that. Not all of them are as sick as they were, February, March, April, but there's definitely a larger number of those people.
But more people are catching it earlier, right?
I think so. And I think the thing is that a lot, when COVID first hit the U.S., it was in its infancy. And, the unfortunate thing with a new disease, when it's in its infancy, it is constantly mutating. And it mutated. So you would find a treatment, try it, and then all of a sudden that treatment didn't work for the next person. And I think what's happened is that now that it's kind of mutating to a point where people are catching it earlier, people aren't getting as sick. And fortunately enough for us now is people that are getting sick that are requiring hospitalizations. There are concrete treatment plans in place that are working.
Right.
That's the big thing.
So the percentage, say, of people that have to go to the hospital versus percentage of people that have to go to ICU, is that
correct?
So that's going down. The people are getting treated earlier, better. If that makes sense.
I would say so. I mean, when I say we have 90 to 100 people, you're talking maybe 15 of those are in ICU, as opposed to when we first started, the only people that were in the hospital were in ICU. A lot of those people are in just medical surgical beds requiring maybe some additional oxygen, maybe requiring some additional, medical treatment, but are definitely stable, as opposed to people that got sick at the beginning. You got sick and you ended up in the ICU.
So
is your experience still that those who are elderly and obviously with other underlying conditions, do they continue to be the most at risk in your experience?
I would have to say, in my opinion, yes. I still, we have the occasional outlier that is in critical care, but I would say if you looked at the amount of critical patients, I would say still the average age is, mid 70s to late 70s to 80s. And,
kind of like Masonic Lodge.
Well,
just saying.
Cross section.
Yeah. And underlying medical problems, but
yeah.
So Brian, how has your I hesitate to use the word behavior because it sounds like it means something, but how have your actions changed in real life as a result of COVID? I mean, I'm talking about going into Wawa. Do you go in with your hands in the post scrub position and open the door with your elbow and all that kind of stuff? Or you're front line. I mean, I don't know anybody that's closer to the front line. How has it affected you and your day-to-day activities? That kind of.
Well, I mean, when this all first started, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I honestly, I kind of thought, we're kind of blowing this out of proportion. This is a coronavirus based illness. We've had coronavirus illnesses for decades. I thought that this was definitely, something that was being blown bigger than it really needed to be. But then I started watching it, and I started seeing the influx of patients. I started seeing the influx of critically ill patients, and doing my homework, and not just watching what all of the major media spewed out at you, but really doing my research, and started realizing that, hey, this is nothing to joke around about. The bottom line is if you think about really what truly prevents the spread of coronavirus, it's everything that everybody on this podcast right now learned in kindergarten. Don't be gross, sneeze in your elbow, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and don't touch other people. And, quite frankly, they've been preaching that for years from the medical side of the house to prevent the spread of flu. And,
let's see, we would call that hygiene.
Correct.
Right? Isn't that a thing?
And if you look, I mean, the fact that people are actually doing that now, it's truly and honestly, it's what's going to prevent the spread of it. But, once I got corona and I survived it, I don't want to say survived it because, that makes me sound like, oh, I'm a corona survivor. I mean, my bout with corona was not terrible.
Can we get a ribbon made for you?
You might. I mean, that'd be
green for mucus. That'll be it. Yeah, that'll. Yeah.
But I kind of feel at the point now where it's I wash my hands. I try to make sure that if I go somewhere, I have my mask on. I mean, I'm not so much worried anymore about myself, especially now that I've had it. So I know I have antibodies. I'm in the process of getting vaccinated, so I know I'm producing additional antibodies. But, I might walk into the store and there might be, some little sweet lady that's in there, or gentleman that, hasn't had that opportunity to have that. And, so I have to be mindful of that and at least try to do the right thing and protect them. And that's the biggest thing that I think at this point, now that I see these people and these anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers, and I watch them and see these videos of them, and they're out in the public and they're talking about their medical conditions and, and their rights and everything like that. And I'm like, listen, this is no joke. This is a real thing. For instance, the amount of people that have contracted flu this year is so astronomically low compared to previous years. And that is simply from the precautions we've taken for COVID. It's an absolute 100% direct link to the precautions we took for COVID has, without a doubt, pretty much drawn the flu down to almost nothing.
Yeah, well, sure, because it's the same vector, right? I mean, it's the same transmission.
Right.
It's the same stuff. So.
And you're wearing your mask and you're washing your hands and you're just not you're not being gross. Like, that's what it comes down to.
I love that. That would be such a good billboard. Why couldn't we do that?
Don't be gross.
Stop COVID. Don't be gross.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that. That's brilliant.
Everything you need to know to learn to protect yourself from this virus, you all learned in kindergarten. Nobody remembers it, but it's everything they taught you in kindergarten.
When I was in kindergarten, it was sneeze into your hands and then touch everyone in the room.
Exactly. Little Johnny's back there picking your nose, and the teacher's like, "Stop that! That's disgusting! Don't do that." Sneeze in your elbow. Don't sneeze on your friends. I mean, but that's really what and truly has prevented this virus from, I would say, being any more deadly than it is. Now, I will say, and this is I will kind of go off script here of my own personal opinion. This without a doubt, this virus has definitely been politicized. It's definitely been thrown into the media with, a gallon of gasoline underneath it. And it really, honestly and truly, I think, made people more scared than they needed to be. And then they also made people more like, well, I'm not doing that than they needed to be.
Yeah, hearts got hardened for sure.
Both, yeah.
On both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
And it truly is a shame because, if we could have been a little bit more on the same page, I think we may not have had as many cases or deaths, or who knows? I mean, I don't have a looking glass that could tell you that for sure, but.
Well, it just goes back to we don't have one set of facts anymore that we agree on.
Correct.
So, and then both of the political parties kind of espouse their own opinion, which is not center. So.
Correct.
Well, there we go. So, Brian, are we? I'm going to ask a question that's going to kind of wrap it up. So I don't want to wrap it up if it's too soon. Shall I? You want me to? You sure?
Yeah, go ahead and ask. Yeah, never stopped us before doing things out of order.
All right. In your career, through the emergency room and through recovery, what is your happiest moment?
Seeing me wake up. He's been there twice for my operations.
That was definitely a good thing. Seeing Larry.
Were you holding the paddles just in case?
Were you whispering, walking to the light?
Yeah, I was just intently praying. But no, I mean, one particular thing. I don't know if I can give you one particular thing, but I've seen, I've seen people that have come in horrible situations, and we've been able to bring them back from that. We've been able to save them from that, and to see that look on their loved one's face when we're able to say to them, "Hey, listen, your loved one was in a bad way, but we've been able to stabilize them. We've been able to get them back." Now, not knowing what's going forward.
No, don't screw it up.
Being able to tell a family member, "Hey, I know this. You came in a horrible point in your life, but hey, guess what? Your loved one's still with us." So,
cool.
Yeah, that's been a good thing.
Well, us civilians, we appreciate you and everything that you and the people you work with do.
So. Well, thank you.
And I'm going to ruin this. Well, maybe we can put this back before that. So, what is a bad day? What was a bad day, especially on the ER side?
What was a bad day?
No, not a specific bad day, but just the type of incidents and type of things that kind of stuck with you.
Well, the worst, I think, for me is when you have a multiple person vehicle injury, and there's a parent that is unfortunately hasn't made it in to the ER, and there's a parent that's in the ER and they're still alive, and you're trying to save them, and there's children involved, and nobody knows what's going on, or you can't really tell them what's going on because you may not know, or you don't want them to know at that point because you're more concerned with trying to keep them focused on themselves. But it never fails. I mean, kids are always the worst, without a doubt. People always ask me, I'm a very cynical type person. I tell a lot of dark jokes.
No, not you, Brian.
Well, that's standard for nurses, cops, firefighters. That's just kind of
shocked, I tell you.
But I tell you, all the people that I ever worked with in the emergency room, we were a very close-knit, twisted family. It was without a doubt. You can ask. I mean, you can talk to anybody that's ever had any type of psychological schooling whatsoever. It is without a doubt a coping mechanism. Barring people in the military, people in the emergency rooms and trauma rooms, have seen the most horrible things that most people shouldn't have to deal with in their normal lives. Even to this day, you know, working in the recovery room, I work with a bunch of very, very great people. A lot of them have never been exposed to ER type medicine. And when they hear these horrible things happen, you know, they're very aghast by it. They're very taken back by it. And I'm like, is it lunchtime yet? I mean, it doesn't even affect me. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, I've been in rooms with horrible stuff going on and walked out of the room and sat down at my desk and ate my lunch and charted on my patients. I mean, that's the way you cope with what we did. And, you know, but it's, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, it's been a great profession. I love it. I love the people I've always worked with. I'm glad I'm out of the emergency room now and in the recovery room. It definitely has helped my blood pressure and my psyche a little. So, like I said, now I know if they're confused, we made them confused. And once they wake up and they're stable, I don't have to see them anymore. So that's always good.
So back to your point about being able to go eat lunch. Sounds like you've been able to establish some really healthy boundaries with the work that you do versus the rest of what Brian is all about.
Yes. I mean, I've always been a firm believer, no matter how bad your day was, I always pride myself that at the end of the day, when that badge swiped through that, you know, time clock at the end of the day, that's where it ended. And that's where you left it.
Right.
You know, you can talk about it, but you don't bring any of that home with you. You just leave it at the office. That's it.
That's awesome.
Tim and Jack, and I guess Larry too, before all of his millions of health issues. Brian is also a huge cigar guy.
Oh yeah, I see him often at one of our favorite cigar spots.
Yes, I was actually there today.
We would love for him to be a sponsor of the show again.
Well, I'll see what I can do.
See if you can find his checkbook.
I will do what I can.
All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and I'll get on to the other things in the show, but Brian will stay here with us in case we think of something later.
Unlocking Symbols with Symbologist Michelle Snyder.
The Lady of the Lake, Unlocked. Oral tradition is fundamental to our golden key. To unlock the secrets of the Great Lady, we must tell a story about an event in history which has been buried in time, deconstructed, and rewritten, yet glimmers of it survive in the tales of Arthur and Avalon. A storyteller might tell it this way. For 1,200 years they blocked the Mediterranean, preventing any trade or travel across the sea by placing armies at 4 locations. Their armies were supplied with bronze for weapons. They maintained vigilant watch for centuries. No one and no thing got through without their permission. No food, spices, fabric, or tools. And no tin. Without tin, bronze weapons could not be made for soldiers who might then fight to free up the trade routes and rescue those taken as slaves. Generations passed. Centuries later, somewhere in the north on a bitter cold winter night, peat from the bog was now blazing in the hearth, warming the tiny farm cottage. Bellows blew gusts of air at the flames to help the fire rage against the cold. As she labored to increase the flames, she gazed at the drops that were oozing slowly out of the peat. They dripped and dripped, forming a small rivulet. As it trickled away from the flame, it cooled and hardened. She usually scraped the hard drops off the hearth by herself, but now being with child, she asked him to help. That is when it all changed. Soon men stood at forges, pounding iron into great swords to be used by the king's men. With them, they fought to clear away the blockade that choked access to the Mediterranean. These great men became legends, heroes of their time. Stories were told about them by bards sitting around hearths. They told of dire battles and great victories. They told of desperate attempts to rescue beloved wives and daughters from the fortresses of the enemy. They told of a mighty king and his magic sword. The greatest of these legends was about a wondrous lady, a goddess of the lake, the vestige of the farm lady and her peat fire oozing iron. It was the great lady, they said, that gave them the magnificent swords used by the kings and knights in the battle for free trade. She had raised an iron sword from the bogs of the north and handed it to the king. The iron swords provided by the Lady of the Lake defeated the bronze weapons of the enemy, heralding the end of the Bronze Age. To ensure her continued blessing and an abundant supply of iron, the knights pledged to return their sword to the Lady of the Lake when they retired. It was an honorable tradition. Give back what you were given so others could receive when they were in need. Our Golden Key can see history in myths and stories, hearing whispers of times forgotten. For more like this, read Symbology, hidden in plain sight. Next time, we will unlock the secrets of the Green Man.
If you'd like to take a deeper look, be sure to check out Michelle's book, Symbology Revision. A link for purchase can be found on the Freya Foundation website. That's freafoundation.net. While you're there, take a look at some of Michelle's other works and find out more about the Freya Foundation and its mission to research and publish the Ensman archives.
In Masonic news today, the Grand Master has announced that limited Masonic activity may resume beginning February 1st. While this is welcome news for Masons across the jurisdiction, several Masters of Lodges are struggling to decide whether to install their successors or break the logjam of candidates waiting to receive their degrees. A recent warning from the district deputy states, whatever you do, don't eat the green beans. They've been in the freezer for over a year. That's the Masonic news. So moted ones.
Very good, Brother Walter. Oh.
Timmy,
that may be a little too close to home in some cases. Check the expiration date on your green beans, brethren.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, the mayonnaise? No, don't even open the mayonnaise. No.
Jeez. Oh, man.
Brian, you can smoke cigars at Ephrata once all this comes undone.
Yeah.
You can do that now. I'll let you in. We'll go upstairs, shoot some pool, smoke a cigar. It'll be
Have a beverage in a solo cup.
One of these days we'll do a podcast from there again.
Yeah, we'd like to thank them for storing our gear for the last year. Seriously, though, Brian, in Ephrata, along the street front is cigar shop, liquor store, Masonic Lodge. Right there, 1, 2, 3, right next to each other. So
you can just die on the streets and be happy.
It's your kind of place.
That's right.
And a pizza shop on the other side, right?
Oh, holy hell. Guess I'll have to be driving to Ephrata now.
Here we go. All right. So, Pete, what do you have coming up Masonically over the next, 2 weeks?
Gosh, I don't know. I've been really just dug into getting Tall Cedar's books in order. We finally got we got money invested in so here's a crazy thing. So we are a 501c8, which is like a club or, fraternal organization. Mm-hmm. And we tried to invest a bunch of money with a mutual fund, and they wanted a piece of paper to prove that we were nonprofit. Well, I've got the past 10 years of tax forms, but and there's this form they were looking for, but that only applies to 501c3s. Mm-hmm. So it took me about a day on the phone and on the internet, and I finally got the state of Pennsylvania to fax me a piece of paper from the early 80s that somehow said that we're a nonprofit corporation and our money's invested. So
Well done.
I was concerned because, we were formed in 1920. I didn't think they would go back that old, but so the 80s. Tim, anything for you?
Well, actually, in about an hour, I will be joining in on the Monday and Thursday edition of the Eureka West Shore Lodge number 302, Toast to Absent Brethren. We have rejoined that tradition to going on Mondays and Thursdays rather than every night of the week. And I'm guessing we'll do that through the end of the month till we reopen again. Then on Saturday, of course, this will all be over with by the time this airs, but there will be a secretary and treasurer training conducted. And if you're listening to this on the podcast and weren't a part of that and would like to receive the link to view that training, you can send me an email at my secretary's email address, secy0302@pagrandlodge.org, and I'll be happy to send you the YouTube link so you can watch the secretary treasurer training. Other than that, just getting ready for stated meeting. I sent out like 6 letters today to candidates waiting degree work, and it's just I think we had all kind of gotten our minds that we weren't going to go back until like April, and now all of a sudden it's in 2 weeks. So it'll be a busy time.
Larry, have you been doing it? You have anything coming up?
No news right now. We're looking at probably getting Goose and Gridiron started sometime in March, but probably not before. I think a lot has to do with the vaccine availability for the old people.
And the wait staff.
The 1Bs, the 1 Bravos.
Josh, what do you have coming up with Lamberton?
Not too much, just the normal behind-the-scenes stuff. Trying to figure out what we're going to do in 2 weeks.
Are you guys going to meet, or do you got to decide that still?
Well, we still got to figure out, we still got to decide what we're doing.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Brian, you have anything coming up exciting, Masonic or non-Masonic?
No, I'm actually off these 2 weeks. I had a little minor procedure done for some carpal tunnel, so I'm just kind of relaxing at home for the next couple of weeks, and that's pretty much it.
Bourbon and cigars is a great therapy for that.
I firmly agree. That's why I've been really promoting that.
Well, we might have to come meet you at said cigar shop.
Yeah, we could do that. Just let us know a day and time.
Will do. I'll definitely look at maybe we can do something next week.
Awesome.
Very cool. Larry.
Yo.
Why don't you take us out of here?
Take us out of here.
Can I talk about what I'm doing?
Yeah, you didn't ask Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Stop. Chickens, get back in their cage.
I threw him off, and I started by asking him.
I know it.
And that just completely screwed him up.
So, Jack, what have you been up to?
That's my In a Dark Place music. Thank you.
Right.
Well, I started a small Facebook page for Masonic book discussions, and it's an open page. It's open to anybody. I don't know what it's going to end up being all about. I just know that I need to read more, and I need some accountability in that. So I made myself accountable to whoever wants to join. The group on Facebook is called the Agora, Agora, a Masonic book discussion. It's not formal. You're not going to get a medal out of it. There's nothing here except doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is growing in knowledge. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but it's worth talking about. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, look us up on the interwebs and hit me up for an invite, and we'll talk.
It's a good idea. Hey, Jack, maybe...
Are you going to charge me for an ad? Because I'm not making any money on this.
Jack, maybe we need to do the book corner again for the Masonic Light.
Oh, Lord, Larry, no. Let that lay. That corpse is already dissolved into the dust.
Chickens. Where are the chickens? Bring the chickens.
Cue the chickens, damn it.
Where are the chickens?
Okay, I had a friend who was killed by a weasel. Oh, no, wait a minute. Hold on. Wrong check. Special thanks to Lamberton Lodge 665 for keeping our furniture clean and heating the office and doing all those great things since we haven't been there since March. We will be back, like MacArthur said, we'll return. Thanks to Josh Lamberton, our producer and director, who continue to make the show great. Thanks to Jack Harley, our news director, and to Timmy Dedman, our marketing director. Our Masonic Light contributors, Michelle Snyder, Jim Stevens, and the great Douglas Madden. I just want to mention one thing about the friend and the weasel. Never mind about that. I just want to say one thing in closing, that they say that a man is judged by the company he keeps. And I'm not surprised that my reputation is in tatters. This is Larry Maris. Thanks for listening.
This is Tim. Good night, everybody.
No words.
Brian, thank you so much. And this is Pete. I guess good night. Josh and Brian.
Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Sneeze into your hands and then touch everyone in the room.